Quick intro.
Sure.
Everybody, this is Senator Charles Perry. I've known Charles for quite a while. He's a House member in 2010. He served 2 sessions and then became a senator in 2014, replacing Senator Robert Duncan. He's a CPA from Lubbock. He's a Texas Tech Red Raider, which y'all know is near and dear to my heart. He chairs the Senate Committee on Ag, Water, and Rural Affairs. He was the first freshman to receive a chairmanship in the Texas Senate since 1993. And he additionally sits on the Senate Committee on Criminal Justice, Health and Human Services, and Transportation. He's been married to Jacqueline for 32 years, and they have 2 children. And
35.
35?
Don't short me 3 up there.
Senator Charles Perry.
I am sorry I'm running late, but it just kind of happens. This is our, I don't know. We started in Eastland, had a road dedication, had an interview, and then we just came out of Coleman and here, and then I've got Rock Lee next. So it'll be a busy day, but a good day. It's good to be out. So I typically tell you a lot about what we did in 85th, but Brian suggested maybe I just go to questions, and from that we'll probably get to do some things in the 85th. But I did tell you we did have a $217 billion budget. That's the 10th largest economy in the world. I used the Comptroller Hager says this, and I think it's kind of cool. We're bigger than Russia's GDP. The state of Texas outproduces what Russia does as an economy. So we are a force to be dealt with. And that kind of puts Russia in perspective. But we need to watch those guys, so for sure. But with that, I'm going to take some questions and then we can kind of move on. So I want to make sure we get what you guys is important to you, because we did a lot of good stuff this session. A lot of things in CPS, foster care, put some money in TRS, healthcare for teachers. Not enough. We still got a big problem building there next session, but we got a lot of challenges. But you don't want to be anywhere but Texas because we probably can meet most of them. Harvey, a lot of people have questions the last few. Harvey is going to impact us on a short-term basis pretty severely. But once that money starts moving in the economy and buildings happen and appraisals and houses get back on the rolls and stuff, 2 years out we'll look back and it was probably not as devastating as you would think it is today. But we're going to be okay, but it is a challenge, and it is going to be a challenge. The state's portion of that, it's the economic downturn we're going to see from sales tax. School districts are going to feel it in appraisal values. So those are things on a short term that we're going to have to live with and improve. A la rainy day fund. If we go back into session and our sales tax deposits haven't been budget because we had a 90-day window here where people weren't spending money, we probably will end up with the rainy day tab. But been there, done that once. It's okay. That's what it's there for. So all that to say, we'll make it through it. We hope Irma does come into the Gulf. That could be, it can't destroy anymore, but that could sure really kill a spirit. You know, right now we got a pretty healthy spirit of people. The old Texas tribe and come back in and go, but you get another one back to back, I think that could be a different story. So with that, I'll take some questions and we'll open it up and move forward on some of those. So a lot of different things this session, maybe some of you guys got questions. If you don't, I'll talk a lot. So don't feel bashful.
So how's the rain going? Where is it?
So I think here in about a month, maybe October, Comptroller will transfer about $2 billion over in it. We were kind of thinking we'd end up around $11 billion once the transfers have been made, if all the commitments we're making, he puts that in. So for those that don't know it, at our peak of our oil boom a few years back, we were at 900 rigs. You wouldn't know it today, but we have slowly moved back in. We're probably getting close to 600 rigs in production in the Permian Basin. It's just kind of been quiet and subtle at a $45 a barrel average. So we're doing okay. We're going to be all right. But that rainy day transfers basic severance tax. We move half for schools and some other things we're dedicated to. But about $11 billion is probably where we kind of end before we start up next session. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I work in the school district.
Okay.
I want to know why you voted for making it hard for teacher associations to do payroll deductions
Okay.
when that has no cost on the state whatsoever.
Good question. So basically what we have, and I'll just tell you the politics. That's somewhat of a political vote at some level, but in some else it's policy. So those associations that people are subscribed to, my wife's a retired teacher, she never paid a due. She never paid one dues to an association. I'll tell you some stories about the session as to why you need to rethink it. But those dues are collected and forwarded on, and there's an administration cost associated with it. But here's the real reason, I'll tell you the politics of it. Those associations campaign against people in politics. And states that have gotten that done see a 40% reduction in membership, and that's the political nature of it. I could lie to you, tell you, but the bottom line is those people come after people like me regularly in campaigns. So that's what it is. So those associations that say they don't do campaigns, that's just a bold-faced lie. They're in the campaigns. So you've got a state-funded operation. Teachers get money from the state and districts pay money to the state. It's a taxpayer-supported venture, effectively contributing to campaigning against people. So that's, I won't tell you a story, but that's the policy behind it.
So you said your wife never joined an organization, so she never had any kind of liability insurance?
So there's a misnomer out there, and this is a different discussion, but they sell all of my new teachers coming in, you've got to have this liability insurance. If you don't have it, you're going to get sued, and they're going to come get your firstborn. Here's the deal. Your district's going to defend you if you were doing what you were supposed to be doing. If you're being stupid and sleeping with the kid next door, or being inappropriate, or doing something stupid, there isn't any amount of insurance in the world that's going to protect you from that. But school districts will defend you as a teacher if you're just teaching in the normal course of business. You don't need the liability insurance. That's a hook to an unsuspecting new teacher, and they do it intentionally because most people coming out of college don't know any different. I'm a CBA by practice. I knew what districts would provide lawsuits, and I knew what they wouldn't. We never paid the dues. Yes, ma'am.
I'm also a teacher, and I understand the concept that y'all don't like them because associations you feel like maybe, but as a teacher, I mean, it's going to be hard for all the teachers in the state to go down to Austin and get our views across.
Great.
So that's why I feel like an association is represented.
So do you know that very same association, there's numerous, but one of them, but all of them for this matter, actually came to the legislature, and we have pitched $1,000 raise or a bonus, and their association, your association sat down and said, we do not want any money into our teachers' salaries that's not guaranteed to go on in perpetuity. Did you know that?
I have no idea what
There-
association you're talking about.
CASA, or CASB, all of those school associations. So we had a plan to put $1,000 of salary increase into a teacher's salary. We had it paid for in the first year. We can't commit, we're a 2-year budget. But we had that plan paid for. We were going to physically see $1,000 to teachers that met 6 and 10 years. There were some steps in there. It was several $1 million, several $100 million. And the associations came to us and said, we would rather not have a single dime if you can't commit to funding that in perpetuity. That's your association representation, just so you know. It's on video if you want to go hear it. Senate Finance Committee, Chairman Jane Nelson, looked it up, and your association was asked very directly, you're telling us you would rather have no money for your teachers if the state can't guarantee they can fund it past this payment? And the answer was a blatant yes, that's what we're telling you. That's your association representation. Other questions? It's crazy. How you doing? You were down were you down during the SB2 and some of those discussions? Anybody, county commissioners or any of that stuff? So property tax reform, very hot button issue, very hard issue. A lot of people in the urban areas are being priced out of their homes. It's just a fact. It's not political, it's just a fact. They can't stay up with property tax payments. Unfortunately, Harvey may swell that for a while and kind of get a reprieve. So big property tax moves in the legislative session, big agenda. My local governments in my rural counties, I have 51 counties, 48 of them are under 10,000 people. They're not going to ever see a significant enough tax increase to be affected by the laws that we were talking about. Currently, if they want to go 8% or better, they have to ask for your vote through a petition. The laws that were being said would have dropped that to 4%, and then you have an automatic vote. You don't have to require a petition to get the vote, you just get to automatically vote for anything above that. My little county, you can tell me, how much does a penny of property tax generate for the city?
For the city, 1 penny, 10,000, 12,000 bucks.
$10,000. So if he raises your property taxes 1 penny, he's gonna get $10,000 of revenue. Harris County gets $30 million. If he just needs to buy a new police car, he needs 60 grand. So I carved out those little guys. What a carve out means is this new law wouldn't affect them. Because they've got to be able to raise revenue without having to pay for the cost of an election that's going to be equal to or more than the benefit of the taxes raised, just to stay with basic services. But Harris County, on the other hand, they're pricing the people out of homes. That has to change. We didn't get it done in the special, we didn't get it done in the first one, so we'll go back next session and you're going to see property taxes come back. And that's one of those big agenda items that very passionate. It wasn't a slam against my counties or locals, but in our urban areas, it's very relevant. And I got 47 of my 51 counties carved out of 48 by being able to exempt them for a $25 million budget or under, so that people like him wouldn't have to come and ask you for a penny just to be able to keep the lights on. Or because he's got a TCEQ permit issue that he's got to deal with. So that's why that was one of those. I always mention the bathroom bill. A lot of people made fun of the bathroom bill. A lot of my school boards, a lot of my school administrators raising Cain about, why are y'all doing the bathroom bill? You're fixing to see it over the next 2 years why that was an important bill. Didn't pass. So effectively, had the state passed the bathroom bill, as it was officially known, it would have prohibited school districts from allowing boys and girls to share the same locker rooms, co-ed locker rooms. It would have had some guidance with UIL over allowing girls to play on boys' teams or boys to play on girls' teams. All those issues. The state would have been the defense. So had a district had a situation that they're being tested for that social re-engineering of the day, they could have said, our hands are tied, it's a state law. And then the AG would have picked it up and defended it. My little 1,200 districts across the state, 149 of them in my Senate district, rural capacity has no budget to defend that. They're going to have plants put into those systems to test this theory. And then they're going to be sued. And they're going to have to basically acquiesce. And that's not a good situation to be in. So we're going to probably regret all the misinformation that got out there in the press that killed that initiative when you see your local districts being tested for that social agenda of the day. And I'm sad that that's going to be the case. San Antonio's already said it's okay. We think co-ed locker rooms are going to be fine. But where it says we'll embrace diversity. And so it's not a value system I can share with a participant in. And I'm afraid that if there was ever an argument for a voucher system, you're going to see an exodus through the public schools as that momentum catches hold and moves forward. Hope I'm wrong, but it's already beginning to show its character. Yes, sir.
No one likes to talk about a tax increase upon us per se, whether it's for retail home goods or whatever. But how long has it been since the state has raised the fuel tax?
Yeah, full tax, it needs to be looked at. And it's been 1996, maybe?
96 or 98?
96 or 99. Hasn't stayed up with inflation. Here's what we did to get around not raising the fuel tax. We dedicated sales tax. We've dedicated ourselves out of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
We have $80 billion to public and higher ed, $80 billion to health and human services and Medicaid, which is going to consume our world as a state and as a nation. $26 billion went to transportation. So 3 items, 270 budget, 86% is already gone before we show up. We have very little to work with. In that transportation funding, the voters approved, and we said it, we dedicated it, about $5 billion of sales tax, motor vehicle tax, towards roads and bridges. So we kind of got around it, but we dedicated one more source of revenue that we no longer have access to do other things in the state. Bad policy, good policy. When you're in a we're not going to raise taxes environment, and we've been that way forever, you got to get your roads paid for. So I like the fact that and here's the policy. The dedication of having that guarantees there'll be funding going forward, so contractors and bills can be let and roads can be designed. So there's some certainty in that dedication, so it wasn't all bad, but it starts to tie up our hands pretty quiet. I'm working through, everybody says, let's just go to consumption tax and get rid of property tax. Well, the maintenance and operation is about 60% of your property tax bill. We might can find a balance of consumption taxes, gas taxes, sales taxes, user fees, fireworks taxes. There's a whole list of things that you pay when you buy stuff that we can't use just sales tax, but maybe we can spread that out and replace the M&O portion of the property taxes for school districts. Be a significant base sharing, which spreads the cost of that business over. Here's the problem. Our working poor, our $15 and under people, anything you do to disposable income kind of messes with them pretty severely. So gas tax or sales tax, all those have negative effect. And if you don't get that balance right, you create a working class poor that's moved to the entitlement because, heck, why would I work when I can get this over here? So that's that balance you look for. The idea that we can do it through consumption, maybe, but here's the problem. About 17% of their bill of their rent, and a large part of that population rents, is property tax. I have no guarantee that if we swap that out with the consumption, that the landlord's going to drop the rent 17%. If he doesn't, then we've really created a problem. So it's going to be a policy discussion. It's going to be a big thinking discussion. I'm going to be beat up for wanting to raise taxes. Well, I'm really not. I'm looking for tax wars. It's a totally different animal. But if you really don't like your property taxes and you don't like the lack of transparency and you don't like the lack of control, consumption tax is what we have. State income tax is not a good option, and it will never work, and it just penalizes the working class again. Because if you're not working, you're not going to pay state income tax. So you just move one more level of tax onto those people that have work or income. So that's not a viable option. It's a matter of state pride, but as a public policy goes, it's a horrible idea to go down the road of income tax. So that one's not even viable. So we got to start with our consumables. And there may be a magic bullet that you could spread it thin enough that everybody pays a little on something they're buying and get us there. It's a stretch. I'm looking for $28 billion of tax law. It takes a lot of stuff, but we might can get there. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
School vouchers,
Mhm.
where do you stand on that?
So, two things. We had two bills that came up this session. The first bill was in the regular session. It was an all-out voucher bill, pretty much. I carved out 237 to 254 counties. So I voted for the bill because I got the carve out. I took 237 of 254 counties and said this won't apply to you. As a representative in rural Texas, I'm a pretty big voice, no longer that I've been involved, but I'm only one voice. There's 30 other guys that may want vouchers. So all I can do is what I control. I got 237 of those carved out. It went over in the House and died. It came back with a disability for 5,000 kids in it, and a lot of my rural schools say, we would like to have, we don't do a good job. We don't have the resources to do what needs to. If you want to do it that way. So that was not quite as controversial. That had more money attached to it that my district needed. It didn't have a carve out. I voted for the money for the district because there was 5,000 disabled kids that were tied to a voucher. So it's a matter of what decision do I need to make that's best for the district. It wasn't going to affect my district. My disabled kids pretty much are in the bigger areas of my district. They kind of get taken care of, but to have an option for a parent that's in a situation like that that doesn't have it, they want to try it. But it had money in there for acetar and some other issues that were relevant to my 149 districts possibly. So I voted for mine. Didn't pass. Special session, they left the voucher discussion out. We passed a really good education bill. They put an additional $212 million in the teacher retired health care, which pulled the premiums back down to $1,500 a month. $1,500 deductibles. Pulled the premiums back down from where we left them in the special session. It's a $1.2 billion problem coming into the session. It's going to be a $4 billion when we go back in two sessions. That's a horrible problem. It's one we can't answer. It's healthcare 101. Anybody that's in business knows what healthcare's been. And it's the same problem with the state. We put in more money for autism and dyslexia. So we had a pretty good education bill come out of the special session. In fact, I think it was probably one of the highlights of the special session. Pro-life, we had probably the best pro-life session for standing for the innocent, the unborn, and the elderly, those that can't speak. It was quiet because of the bathroom bill and the property tax bill. All the attention was up here, and we just slid in about 20 items, and about 6 or 8 of them got through. I passed the DNR bill in the special session, do not resuscitate bill. So for those that didn't know it, I did slide a do not resuscitate order into your chart without your knowledge or without your family's knowledge. Didn't happen much, but it only happens one time, that's enough. So now that communication lines have to be established. The doctor has to tell you, or has to tell your spouse that, hey, do not resuscitation order is something that I'm contemplating. So now that dialogue's open, but we had a really good pro-life session. We put a lot of money in CPS, about $500 million. Gave the CPS caseworker $1,000 a month on average raise. That had been sorely needed, sorely liked. That's the toughest job in the state. If you want to see someone with a heart of gold and deal with the nastiest of humanity, go ride in a CPS caseworker 1 24-hour period in a city of more than 50,000 people. You will leave encouraged that there are people that are called to do it. You will leave so disappointed and devastated at how much pain an adult can inflict on a child. But those people are the heart and soul of the front lines of dealing with those kids, and they got what they needed, and it's really a huge impact even in the short order that we've been there. We put a lot of money in during the interim to start that debate, so for discussion. Other questions?
How do you stand on defined benefit retirement plan?
Okay, so you guys obviously have come as a coordinated group on teachers. Here's the deal, defined benefit plan, and I'm okay with that. Defined benefit plan is the benefit plan the teachers picked years ago. There's a lot of people that want to get rid of it, but those people that say that don't understand. We can't afford to get rid of it. It would take about $30 to $40 billion, last estimate, to get rid of the defined benefit plan. I'm looking for $1 billion to keep the lights on in the state next year. So as a practical reality, when you hear Senator so-and-so filed a bill to get rid of the defined benefit plan, it has no meat, no substance, because if you kill a plan, you vest everybody 100% in the plan, and you have to have a check to vest those people out. So the state's portion, the underfunded portion of the defined benefit plan as we speak, is probably in the neighborhood of $40 billion. Last time I checked, we don't have $40 billion in an account to cover that vesting. So as a practical matter, the defined benefit plan is here. The other thing is, it really doesn't save us a lot of money if we get rid of it. If you swap that out for Social Security, the percentage, it's about a percentage difference. So we might save 1 point, which is a lot of money in Texas, but it's really not, it's not going to do what it intended to do. But we don't have the money to kill the plan. Now, we have not been very smart as a state to allow the things that we've allowed to do, like retiring earlier than we probably should have. And it's a testament to our technology. We're living longer than we thought we would. So as a practical matter, there needs to be some tweaks to that plan. 85-15 instead of 80-20. Or maybe 90-10, because people are living longer. But if we don't make some tweaks to the benefit structure of that, how that works, it will get to a point where it's not actually funded, and it will, by default, implode on itself. So I don't want to stand up here and tell you, you're good, don't worry about it. Y'all probably don't have to worry about it. The 35 to 45-year-old teacher that may want it, those are the ones that we're working on trying to make sure it stays there. But we're about 80% funded, and that's a lot of market. So when the market goes down and they're cutting the return, we were using an 8% actuarial return value, meaning we were saying we're going to get 8% in that fund, and it's done pretty well. That's not reality. We dropped that, I think, to 6. to get more real about what we're gonna owe. I'm not anti-defined benefit plan, and the reality of getting rid of it is just not real. So put your mind at ease and go to bed tonight saying, they can't take it because they can't afford to take it. That's the truth. Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I actually testified on SB2
Okay?
over in the House of the Senate. And my experience down there was, especially in the Senate side, that long night that your colleague, Senator Bencourt, approached elected officials, county judges, sheriffs, city managers, city mayors with contempt, hostility, and just genuine disrespect. I think that cue probably came from Lieutenant Governor Patrick. There's a sense that the Texas Senate has declared war on local governments. Do you believe that to be true? And then I got to follow up with that. The elephant in the room on property taxes is, as you mentioned, school taxes. BISD is probably going to be about half my tax liability in Ballinger. And it's not BISD's fault. They've got to tax at a certain rate. Payer's going to make sure that the property values are going to go up. And I know that there's some discussion about whether it's 13% over 2 years or the things in SB1 that came out regular. How committed are you, and how committed is the Senate, and how committed is Lieutenant Governor Patrick to finding a workable solution for school funding? Because if you take away school funding, if you properly fund schools from a state level, then you move that liability off of my back and their backs and onto the legislature or the state of Texas. And I think investing in children is probably the best thing. The identity of Ballinger is not the city council chambers. The identity of Ballinger is Bearcat. And it's that ISD and it's that school. And it's the next person who's going to create the widgets that's going to bring the jobs back to Ballinger. What are you going to do as a senator? What's Lieutenant Governor Patrick presumably coming back to Lieutenant Governor? What are you going to do in 2019 to change that narrative
Yeah,
and to fund these schools?
there's a whole lot wrapped up in that.
I know.
A ton wrapped up in that. Let's start with a basic building foundation. Most important election you have is school board. Plain and simple. Those people get to say no to the social engineering. They get to say yes to academics, and they get to say yes to other things. And until we have school boards that put more priority on classroom performance instead of Friday night performance, we got a problem. Bottom line, you need to let people that got enough courage to stand up and say, you know, that science thing, yeah, that's really, you know, if your kid's mad you didn't play that Friday night, he'll get over it. But the science thing, that's internal. So we need to start there. As far as being able to fund school districts, I love the discussion. Everybody says it's broke, but when you look at it, it's there for a reason. The reason we fund schools by formula the way we do is because there's a face attached to every one of those. There was somewhere along the way, Johnny needed something different than what Jake needed, and so we fixed the formula to accommodate. So it's really wrapped up into the diversity of the demographic of our state, and it's 5 million kids. Additionally, when people hear we're going to redo school finance, there's an automatic assumption that means they're going to get more money. There ain't no more money. There's one checkbook. It pays city taxes, school taxes, county taxes, state taxes, federal taxes. There's only one checkbook. I always get tickled when people say, well, that's a state dollar. No, it's a taxpayer dollar. There's only one payment. So, a couple things. One, the animosity and the contempt was mutual. It didn't start out that way. Now, a little history with Bettencourt and Patrick. They've been in Harris County all their lives. And all they've had is appraisal districts, appraisal districts, appraisal districts go up and up and up and up and up until they're literally priced their people out of homes. So there's a little history there. They were able to get significant reforms done on Harris County level. Bettencourt was. So there's a little history. So he came in with a little bit of an edge from his urban bent, but also with the battle stars that came with it. Nobody declared war on individual counties, cities, officials. In fact, it is, I hold mine to a pretty high esteem, contrary to the internet. But when you have an association that comes to the table and says there isn't going to be any negotiations, TML and TAC, when they show up and say, we don't give a crap what you're talking about in this session, you ain't getting it done, then immediately the guards went up. So as individual counties and local officials, they got caught up in that. And I don't think the Senate was as bad as the House. The House was pretty rough, pretty disrespectful. The Senate was not as respectful as I would like my colleagues to have been. But a lot of those officials brought that on themselves, but more importantly, the associations brought it on by a position of, we're not going to talk about this. As far as the school districts being the biggest part, yeah, it is. But you can't ignore the data that everybody's tax bills are growing faster than what people's ability to pay on city, county, and all the way up. So it's a big issue. We need support, we need solutions. But one solution can be, we're not going to talk about any solution. So we like it the way it is. I will beat my associations up. TAC told me there would not be a carve-out option for small rural communities. TML represents big urban areas. If you pay your dues to TML, you're supporting Harris County because they really don't care about Ballinger. If you pay your dues to TAC, they really don't care about Ballinger. They only care about big, because that's where the bread's buttered. So they told me point blank, you ain't getting a carve-out. Well, right there, I knew they weren't serious about working with me. So that animosity was mutual. It was a two-way street. I hope that the little time heals all and the rhetoric will come down and we'll come back to the table to talk about the legitimate issues. School funding will have to be replaced by tax law. Let me take the cost of swapping taxes. When you take the local property tax out of the equation, you give more centralization of funding and power to your state government. Be careful what you ask for. Same thing with counties. People get mad enough over county taxes, and people get in this process that we got into last session. You know, county's an extension of the state. You want us to get rid of property tax county? We'll just figure a way how to pay for it. The state, take the counties out of it, and put a state employee out of it. I don't think that's what we want. But you need to be careful what we ask for. Because we're on the brink of taking out school property taxes with some solution going forward. And that might be the best thing. I don't know. But I've never seen a process where you centralize power and money at a governmental entity more and more and more to the point that you lose your local identity. So we've got some big policy issues to have a good debate on before we jump off. The animosity is real. I'm not going to lie to you. It was disrespectful on both sides. I went around 7 different hearings in this state. I was in the Valley, I was in San Antonio, I was in Arlington, I was in Lubbock. I think Houston, I don't remember now. On that property tax hearing, I was flabbergasted by some of the commentary from the local taxing jurisdictions officials coming to us and saying, we don't raise taxes. And on the chart, you could tell it. And it's that same old line, we didn't raise your tax rate. Well, they benefited by the appraisal creep. And that's the state we live in, and I'm okay with that. But let's be truthful and transparent about it. And most importantly, what that bill did was give the voters a voice that if you're going to raise my taxes above 4% coming out of the Senate, then don't make me jump through hoops to come ask for why you are raising my taxes. It just said, just ask me as a voter if I approve to raise the tax. That's not a bad thing in a democracy or a republic form of government. It's not practical for the city of Ballinger to have an election every time they need a penny, though, to do basic things. So that's why I try to strike that balance. It's a tough decision. In 51 counties, I got urban and I got rural. 48 of them are rural. They're about 50-50 population. Lubbock, San Angelo, and Abilene, and they're about what all my rules do. So no matter what I do here, I'm going to be in a pickle. My 149 school districts, ASTAR and non-ASTAR. I have all my district superintendents here, 149 of them, 50 of them say, I hate ASTAR. The other says, you've got to keep ASTAR. So as a rule, it's a real challenge. But on those tax matters, I think it's appropriate to exempt. The animosity you speak to today, I don't know that it's subsided. It will be a lot on how your association representatives show up at the table and say, let's figure this out. And I hope to have some alternatives for school finance. But again, be careful what we ask for.
How did we get from a state that funds 50% of school stuff down to 38%?
Our state dollars are still over 50%. We still fund more than 50% GR for public ed. $80 billion goes to higher public ed. As a proponent of all funds, I think it's 30-some%, but as a performance of general fund, it's over 50%. So the dollars are still a bigger percentage now. What's happened is we're putting more dollars over more kids, so it's not had the impact it was back when it was scattered. But here's the deal: we're a property tax-based system. State of Texas has had about a 2.6 trillion growth in value. So the way the state funding formulas work, if the property values are up on the local, the state's portion goes down. If the property values go down, the state's portion goes up. And that was something that wasn't being told in that storyline. What they didn't tell you is it's a self-leveler. And there'll be a day where the state has to write their share because the locals went down. 4 million people sitting down in Harris County, let's assume 60% of them are homeowners, their school district's values are going to go down. The state of Texas is going to have to tap rainy day to make up that shortfall in school funding over that. But it is this in school finance. One's up, the other one's down, and one's down, the other one's up. And it levels. But our budget, about the numbers in the car, contrary to the opinion out there, on a dollar basis, we're still 50% of our budget, 52, I think, goes to public ed, or education.
So when we hear we're 45th per capita student
So-
spending,
Yeah,
or
so
47th, or
So let's talk about that. If you look at Massachusetts, where the median household income in Massachusetts is $100,000. In Texas, that's probably about 45. So up there, they can spend a whole lot more money because they're very affluent. Up there, they don't have 5.5 million kids in the system. Up there, 60 to 70% of their kids are not free and reduced lunch qualified. They graduate the MIT grads out of high school. So you're comparing us in a situation where the apples and the oranges don't match. You bring us down to where we're compared with demographic considerations, we're not in that category. Another thing, the Supreme Court ruled that state funding policy was not perfect, but it works, and part of it is because they peeled back the layers and said, it's a weird formula, but it does accommodate. But in that ruling, if you go in and read it, it said Texas does extremely well. When it comes to free and reduced lunch, we're top 5, I believe. If it comes to African American, we're 11th. If it comes to Hispanic, I think we were number 3. So you don't get those stories in the media because they don't want you to hear it because they've got an agenda, which leads to, we got a problem. Until we have a media that wants to report facts instead of politics, we're going to lose the country, and we're there today. Pretty simple. But those statistics are, it's always the devil's in the detail. And I can tell you any statistic I want with pretty much any agenda and meet it. I try to tell you as much fact and truth as I can, and I have those numbers on school finance in the car. Came straight out of the finance group of the state. But these parameters, it's like U.S. has the leading death rate amongst all babies in the world. That's one of the statistics I hear all the time. We're a horrible mortality rate for infant deaths. When you carve out and pull out that agenda that's being met, you go to China, if a kid dies in China, I think it's 2 years or younger, they don't even report it. See how you skew these statistics? So be careful what you buy into. Go do your homework. Don't get lazy. Don't get on the internet. Trust me, if it's on the internet, don't necessarily mean it's true. But so you've got to kind of split us. Our median income, I think, is 45 grand. You put us across the board to those kind of metrics, we're probably head and shoulders above. So those are the things you deal with. We have 5.5 million kids that are very diverse kids. Very diverse. We speak over 100 languages in our public school system.
and so we don't need to take any money from those and put them in private schools in the form of voucher anywhere, because we got to fund them.
Yeah, and I don't think we pitched a plan that takes money out of public schools.
I thought that's all vouchers did.
Depends on how the voucher's created. The last one didn't, contrary to what was out there. It was a credit from the business community that we weren't going to get anyway. So again, it's just the devil's in the details. It's complicated. fill in the details. I'm not a far voucher guy. I'm not really against vouchers. I haven't seen a voucher that makes a lot of sense. But if I can get a better educated product and I give the power of the parent to do that, and it happens to be a voucher, so be it. But I'm probably gonna always try to carve out my districts. I don't think it fits my rural communities very well. But there hasn't been a voucher program yet.
When you say that there's 52% that is going to public education, just curious, how much of that goes from pre-K to 12 education, and how much is higher ed?
I can get those numbers for you. I don't have it broken down that way. I need to get those numbers. I don't want you to leave here with misinformation. It's not my goal to misinform.
Well, the reason that I asked that is, and this is not personally slanted on you.
Sure.
Please don't take that. But you know, it seems like that the state government is really focusing on pre-K to 12 education, which I think they ought to. And from a perception standpoint, they're ignoring the funding and the waste and the non-control of the higher ed.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I don't dispute that higher ed's got a long ways towards cleaning that up. There's no doubt. We did some good things in community colleges. We shorted on the session before, in my personal belief, but we got community colleges back up to par. You know, one man's waste is another man's agenda, and we fund those through formula. Don't get me started on my academics that are removing statutes. That's a different guy. I'm not happy with them. And I love tech, and Chancellor Dunkman, I think, does a good job. Higher ed has evolved to an animal that's different than what I think it's intended for.
Well, I think that goes along with the enormous amount of student loans and stuff that
Yeah,
we
the
put our
average student
graduates
loan,
in.
and that's another soundbite. So the average student debt that a person graduates undergraduate, it's about $27,000 in Texas, I think. So if I'm gonna graduate with $27,000 of debt, be able to get a job starting at 50 and up, that's a pretty good investment.
Yes.
Now, you hear these other numbers, like hundreds of thousands, those are your doctors and your lawyers, those are your postgraduate degrees. And those guys are graduating and making $300,000 up in an emergency room setting. So they have the capacity to do it. I hate the fact that it costs that, but you gotta get to the numbers. The average student loan debt is somewhere around 27, give or take a couple. And that's honestly not a bad investment, but that reflects a different symptom. I left tech with a $2,500 student loan, and that was because I chose to do it. I worked every summer in Oilfield. I worked offshore. I worked in the Permian Basin. I worked when I was at tech, and I know you can't do that today. It's a little different cost structure. But I also had a parent that didn't have the newest car. They didn't help me a lot because there were two working people. We need to change the whole dynamic back to what's important. It goes back to Friday night versus classroom. We're our priorities. We don't fund our priorities. There's plenty of money. We just chose to spend it differently. And when we choose to spend it differently, there's outcomes. And if we don't like the outcomes, we have ourselves to blame.
Well, but that is my, I guess my thought about vouchers though, you know, because I do agree with you that there's this pot of money and we're not getting any more. And that's all programmed.
But that's,
And
like I said, that credit was a business directed
right,
credit.
in that instance it was, but there's been several types of vouchers that come up that was not that. And, you know, it's hard for, you know, in my personal belief, I think the majority of our nation's kids are still going to be educated in public education.
I agree.
And when we're focusing on these vouchers and how to slide these vouchers into these bills and all that type of stuff, in my opinion, that we're losing focus on how to make public education better.
I don't disagree, and I think public education still is a huge problem, and I think it's good. I don't know that it's the answer for everybody, so I'm
Oh, I agree with that.
but it is a good plan. But there's room for improvement in it.
Sure.
When the highest percentage on average, now this doesn't affect, I've got one school district that's 78% of the money going to the teacher salaries, classrooms. That's phenomenal. State average is less than 40. Most of them hit around 30. So what do you spend the other 70% on? That's a question that needs to be answered. I mean, really, it's a hard issue. People don't get like it. But what are we spending 70% of our taxpayer dollars on if it's not the teacher and classroom experience? and it may be janitors and support staff and facilities. But here's a comment. When a superintendent says, oh, that bond debt, that's a taxpayer-approved bond, it still took money out of that taxpayer's pocket that could have went to the classroom. $80 million football stadiums in East Texas right now. Guys, we got to stop the nonsense and get back to the basics. So I'm not beating anybody up. I'm just trying to tell you, we can keep doing what we're doing, and you know what, that'll keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. We can't keep doing what we're doing and expect our kids to be successful, expect a society that has respect. We can't keep revising our history because it doesn't fit the narrative of the politics of the day. Whether our history is bad or good, it's our history. We need to learn from it and move from it and work on it. But we have this whole generation of political correctness, and we have this entitlement mentality that is just literally going to kill our state and everything in this country that we all live with. And it starts with individuals in this room saying enough. I'm more interested in what that kid's able to do outside of sports. I'm more interested in that kid that doesn't have a family life anymore. I tell my church is a great church. I love my pastor. I wouldn't take it for him. But we're building buildings instead of relationships a lot of times. If we start taking care of these people on a community level, we'll have money because the state won't have to spend money on that crap, but it can spend money back into education and roads and infrastructures and water, the things we all need that a government should be doing. But right now, there's this huge Pac-Man, and it's called entitlement, and it's killing us. I know I shorted you. I apologize. I probably talked much, but I appreciate the questions. Hard questions, I'll always answer you. You may not like the answer, but I'll never run from them. I'll get those numbers near guaranteed. You're talking all funds and general funds, and I want to be clear on those. Public and fire, I want to be clear on
And
those.
it's not that I have a stance or anything.
No, I know that. I appreciate it.
It's more just curiosity.
But it's just one of those deals that it's the politics of the reality of it. There is more of a majority than you would expect that want vouchers. I don't agree or disagree. I'm just telling you that's the rules that I'm given today to live with. So we gotta have those discussions. But I'll try to carve this out. That's my job. I'm known as the carve-out king. Now when there's a bill on the floor, they go to Perry and say, how many counties do you want out of this one? And I'm like, how many can you give me? You know, I'm fortunate enough that they still need me to, they come ask me. Because there'll be a point where there's enough of the other that they don't need my vote and they won't even care. And that's the challenge of rural and urban. It's never more clear than it's going to this session. Thank you guys for coming. I got a door prize for anybody to answer the question of how big the Texas economy compared to the world. Compared to Russia. Come on, teachers.
Fourth.
No.
Number 10 in the world.
Have you got one of those?
Yes, sir.
You have. Okay. You have.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I've got to head to, where am I going?
I said you can have one
Okay,
question.
that's fine. Okay, one question.
Just for the newscast.
Sure.
I'll watch it.
So you want to ask it to be open, or do you want to see how this sausage is made? So I'm going to look over here and have the chin down. No, sir. I can't afford my wife's makeup, much less start that.
I don't know. I'll see what these questions are.
He's got one good question, I can tell. He's been listening. So, let's see how I get this. So now you'll get to see what it's like. There you go.
Do I say your first last name for me?
Senator Charles Perry, Senate District 28.
Well, can you just tell me, just wrap up how the 8th legislation went and your overall feeling?
Okay, 8th session was the busiest session I've ever had, the hardest session I've ever had. Pretty productive personally, got a lot of bills done for Royal and other things, but a lot of business left on the table. But we'll probably see in the 86. But we've got bigger issues already in our and some animal charges that are fixing to come up that are going to be specific to Harvey flood control and stuff. So we've got a busy year lined up, which hopefully will carry into the 86 and make some of the animosity go away because we got real issues to kind of focus on some of them. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.